Good morning.
They read my thoughts. They communicated to me without even saying a word. They made me laugh. They made me cry. They filled me with this sense of awe that was so profound that I knew right then my life was never going to be the same.
You know, those tuning in for the Mulder title card, I'm going to get to a story in just a second, but I wanted to show you this thing, this alien ship that I'm holding in my hand, that for some reason has decided not to work. Isn't that like live TV? Now, what if you saw this in the sky in the darkness? What would you do? It's red, color red. Now it seems to work.
Tony Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
Sorry about that. Sometimes you try something for an effect and it just doesn't really work right. Now I'm trying to take the back off of this so I could take a battery out. This device takes 3 batteries. I don't know if you can see that through the light. That was an idea. Comes with a remote control. You put that on the bottom of a drone and you have an alien craft, perhaps. I don't know. The on-air light is on, being powered by the Jackery, and we'll I've got an idea for that, but somebody has to take me to the Dollar Tree, because I'm not going to spend a fortune doing what I want to do to light that thing. And I have no idea. That's why everything seems a little crooked, but that doesn't make any sense. I walked. The reason it's 6:58 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the former United States, the calendar year May 9th, 2021 AD. And I went upstairs to get the one book that started it all, the original early years book with the iconic cover, and me in Hollywood back. And I've talked about this before, but I never really brought it out. I only have one copy of this, though you can get a copy of it on Amazon. But the only reason, I'm just going to read something very short to you. I'm sorry for your ears, and I was outside a little while ago and it's cold. I could see my breath. And we've talked about that in the past 2 episodes, May. But since we've got Mulder on the front cover and one of those Navy photos, I thought this would be apropos. This book was written, published back in 2014. This particular event was from my childhood. And it's a very short, just a couple of paragraphs. But let's go through it. It's a true story. I woke in the middle of the night with a feeling of anxiety. My bedroom door was wide open, and I was scared of something. Of what, I just wasn't sure. Somehow my security blanket got jumbled up, down at the bottom of the bed, too far for me to reach with my hands. All of a sudden, I was pinned down, as if by a very strong wind, but there was no wind, and all the windows were closed. With all the strength I could muster, I tried to lift my head to look down toward the foot of my bed and out the door into the hallway. I had the feeling as if someone or something was coming toward my room. I tried to scream for my parents or anyone, but I was unable to vocalize even a whisper. Forthwith, two strange creatures peered into the room from the side of the doorway. Blackness. When I got up in the morning and I looked in the mirror while brushing my teeth, I noticed two small blisters on the side of my neck. There was no pain, just these bubbly kind of things. Over the course of the day, they faded, and I filed away the whole experience as a nightmare. Years later, I saw television shows about alien abductions, and the people on those shows described similar experiences as mine. I really don't know what happened, but I will tell you, to this day, I prefer to sleep with the bedroom door closed, locked, and bolted. It's true. It happened to me as a child. And they were classic grays, as I recall. Now, this is way before, the popularization of communion and any of that book and any of that stuff. I was just a kid. But it's still stuck. It still sticks in my mind. That's the fear and how intense it was. And I always said to people, I guess if I ever had, it's another one of these things. Look at, you get a visa. These things are coming every day now. But I always said to people that I guess if I ever went under hypnosis, who knows? Maybe I was abducted. And maybe that's why I'm the psycho that I am today. Well, at least that's the way people think I am. Mission Lane Visa credit card, 29.99%. Why can't they just say 30%? I know I say that often, but... And the other thing is about this is that it's got my code, my name, my address. Even though you tear these things up, I don't really care. They know everything about us anyway. But it's like they're tempting those porch thieves to steal your identity by saying, credit at your fingertips, pre-approved credit card. The games people play. Yeah, the early years. This is the book that started it off. I never thought I would write another book after I did this. This was the whole purpose of this was just I knew I had made the decision. This is 2014. This was, it says copyrighted. So that was 7 years ago. And I had, excuse me, prior to that, just had made the decision that I was moving out of my apartment. And so, like I've said before, and I do talk about in the forward to this book, that, you accumulate, how do I say it? There are times in life when it seems we have no choice but to put our dreams on hold and focus on our full-time and best efforts on a job that pays the bills, a family emergency, matters of the heart, health, or home. At such moments, we file away our plans, notes, and works in progress with every intention of returning to them when the current crisis has ended. Not that I was in a crisis at that time. But anyway, so you're left with these. So I had boxes and boxes or scribblings of paper, notes and such not. And I just thought, I'm just going to publish a book that includes like essays I wrote, things that I half started, screenplays that I never finished. I have the screenplay of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather. I worked for Roy Cohn, when I was younger. So these are just little bitty, bits of all that stuff. I wrote a screenplay for of an Edgar Allan Poe story called "The System of Dr. Tar and Professor Feather." My version was a period piece. And a friend of mine, Ira Smith, did those illustrations. But yeah, it was another one that was the book that kicked it off. And then I ended up doing another book because I still had stuff. And and then I ended up being like, I'm gonna finish one out this year. It'll be 10 official books, paperbacks. Though I've written approximately like 11, more or less. But some I incorporated. This book here, The Truth About Everything, ended up getting incorporating something from some of my earlier books. But I also read my conspiracy theories A to Z a couple of episodes ago, and that was in the original, one of the books that I also incorporated into this thing. But I just want to read Philip K. This isn't going to be a reading show, but just to follow with the title card. This is a quote by Philip K. Dick. It's almost a bridge. It's not really a UFO thing, but it's something that is X-File-ish. The future is about our servitude to our corporate financial slave masters. Well, that sounds more like me, of course. Quotations. Unceasingly, we are bombarded with pseudo-realities manufactured by very sophisticated people using very sophisticated electronic mechanisms. I do not distrust their motives. I distrust their power. Philip K. Dick, 1972. Philip K. Dick really, he wrote about everything. He was the master. I found this yesterday just in passing, and I just happened to have it here since we're at a show and tell. Look at this. Television news. This is the contents for September, October 1932. And in this thing is crazy. Visio telephony in France. This is 1932. Okay. But there was one in here that was really, this is like a big deal. This is This is like talking about like Columbia Broadcasting, which became CBS. Sight and sound broadcasting. On one wavelength! Exclamation point. Imagine that. So people don't realize that Roosevelt actually had a video set up in the White House where he was able to talk to his key people, during World War II, I believe. But this is the scary one. So we're talking 1932. And this goes on. I'm not going to read this, but the headline says enough. A two-way cathode ray tube for television. Think of that for a second. A two-way cathode ray tube for television. And there was always rumors about that. That your television was watching you. Now, of course, today I obviously have a camera and a microphone. Well, I have a physical microphone here too. But the idea that if you have a smart TV, you may not even need that little dot camera on there. That, 1932, what are we talking about? 90 years ago. Almost. right? And then you think of Tesla's technology and all that stuff. And the X-Files used to get into all of those kinds of things. It was beyond UFOs. The Mulder I Want to Believe. There's the Mulder poster right there that's in the title card. That may well have brought or will bring people to this website. Webcast, YouTube, TV channel. It's called Rock Flux. Subscribe and like, as they say. Not that it matters. I don't make any money on this. I'm demonetized. Non-monetized. I took an aspirin. Tooth on this side. Last night before I went to bed, this side of my mouth. Teeth were bothering me. Now this side, it's like the whole mouth needs to be just like taken apart. I don't know. Let's look at the remaining weekend weather. So currently it's 39 degrees or so they claim. But it's colder than that because on ground level, remember, these are from weather stations. I say this all the time, that are usually at airports, or in tops of buildings and cities, places that are naturally warmer by at least a degree Celsius, which is their alleged global warming thing. Temperatures increased by a degree Celsius, another degree, and we're all toast. Well, down here on the ground, it's always a degree Celsius colder, not hotter. And up there, it's warmer. So, yeah, it's May 9th, the beginning of the second week of May. Spring began way back in March. And it's 39 degrees. And it looks like at noontime today, we're going to be lucky if we get up to 43 degrees. The outlook for the overnight is in the 30s again. Monday overnight, 39. Tuesday overnight, 36. Wednesday overnight, 37. I was listening to the NOAA radio.
Please listen to NOAA Weather Radio or go to weather.gov/State College on the internet for more information about the following hazards. Frost advisory. In addition, a widespread soaking rainfall of 0.75 to 1.25 inches.
So you just heard it.
Will lead to moderate.
We've got a frost advisory. That just makes my heart. Did you hear that? I hope you were able to hear that. I have a garden out back, which basically is my life. I don't know what to do. What am I supposed to do? It's flourishing. Because we've had a few decent days where the nights were in the 40s. This time of year, it being 45 degrees at night is okay. The daytimes could range anywhere from 60 to 70. Maybe even the high 50s on a cooler day when it's raining. But the past couple of years, it just seems to be getting colder and colder and colder. And that's why I don't understand why they're beating the drum, day in weekend weather. Let's just get that out of the way. Why they're beating the drum day in, day out about this global warming thing. So if you look closely at the card, the title card, I call them the memes for YouTube, where I have Mulder and the poster that I have up on the back wall. You'll see that little triangular thing below the morning show and saying Mulder was right. And that is from the actual, excuse me. I just woke up. Well, I woke up about an hour. I've been up for an hour. I went outside and fed the birds and had a little bit of cereal, which probably irritated my mouth. And took care of fed the cat and did some of that stuff. But that green triangular craft, which is basically just night vision, is what is why it has that tint to it. I had a night vision camera one time. Some of them do that. Some of them are like, just whitish, bright white. They almost look like it's an inverted picture. But whatever the case may be, I actually got that picture, that clip from the military.com, I think, Military Times or military.com. And the article was the Pentagon confirms that the Navy photos and videos were are true, are accurate, are the real thing, the real deal. So I've asked, that was a 2-liter bottle, like somehow expanding. So I've asked this question before, what, why did they lie to us, from maybe going all the way back to Roswell or even before, the original flying saucers were, this, I think, guy up in Alaska, the Northwest, that's how they got the name. He said they looked like saucers. Some pilot was following these things. That was even before Roswell. And everybody knows, I mean, ufologists know all this stuff. The Foo Fighters during the World Wars, the pilots were seeing these things and lights that seemed to be following the planes. So, so we know that this stuff has gone on.
Attention, people of Earth, I have an important announcement to make.
But is this what's going on now? Is this, disclosure? And are we ignoring it? Right? Is this just like a side little feature story? And the announcers, when they present it, have little smirks on their face, like, like they cover it, but they're laughing it off. We're talking about, it's not like I trust the government about anything, obviously, of course, for reasons dating back to this too.
This evening, I come to you. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
Is it the military-industrial complex doing something? Are they up to some kind of game so that this whole event is just to get more funding in a time where they're pulling troops out of Afghanistan? I don't know.
Did you accidentally inject yourself with some kind of psychotropic agent?
That's what they kind of made us all out to be for all these years.
Why are you telling us this?
Anyway.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
This is a nightmare. It must be a nightmare.
So, it's just interesting, the timing of all this stuff. So the title of this is Aliens and Unrelated Psycho-Babble. And of course, Psycho-Babble just refers to me. I touch on a personal experience with aliens, which I read you my story, and then move on to the question of what are these craft that the Navy has been releasing. Should it be have been releasing? What are these craft that the Navy have? Yeah, I think it should be have instead of have been releasing video and photos of, and what are some of the possibilities and why now all of a sudden, plus the usual Psycho-Babble. Yeah, so for at least 70 years they've been saying, that anyone who talks about this stuff is crazy. Even though there was Project Blue Book, right? And I read some of that stuff, some of the other things, the MJ12, which, some people say is real, some people say isn't. But I mean, the volumes of sightings, forget about the shows like Ancient Aliens and stuff like that. You know, some of that stuff you know, is interesting. It's like Chariots of the Gods and stuff. Those are all, what Von Däniken admits it himself. He says, the book basically was all questions, and that's kind of where we stand. We have a lot of questions. And so now the Navy's putting out these videos and photos. Pentagon's confirming it. And it's getting like a little side feature coverage on the on the news. Like, oh, and by the way, the Navy's been like dealing with this for a while, and they've got videos to prove it, and they don't know what they are, and they're not pretty sure, but they're 100% sure they're not the Russians or something. It's kind of interesting. But, imagine all the people who are humiliated over the years. Maybe not so much in a major way, but, by their families and friends. I'm sure a couple people lost jobs. Were thought of as idiots, right? Because they were, it's like my story is true. That really happened to me as a kid. Now you could say, and the intensity to which I still remember it in detail. I mean, does anybody else remember a dream or something? I mean, I've talked about dreams I've had. I mean, I had some dreams last night, but they've already they're gone. I lost them. And even if you remember a bit and piece of a dream, some people are into that kind of stuff, but no, this is a whole different thing. This was pure horror. This was pure horror. I was scared to death. And this was before, I guess it was Whitley Shriver or somebody who put out that book, and then followed up. He was involved in various interviews of people, and the classic alien face that we all know, the gray face. But this was before that. I was just a kid. So, because that used to be the excuse for the longest time, and still is with people. Oh, this is because you saw, televised, you just weren't paying attention, but you saw something about this on TV, and so then your brain put this together in some way. It's like, no, I was a kid. We weren't really big TV, as kids. We had one TV in the house, and it was pretty much dominated by my parents. We didn't want, Saturday cartoons, was about it. And if there was an early baseball game or something that my dad was going to watch, those cartoons were over. Something doubleheader or something that was starting earlier. No, so I had no reference to this whatsoever. So there's definitely, and I've read a couple of books. There have been some good books. I should have brought those downstairs too. I have a bookshelf upstairs in my bedroom with all my classic books. And what I really should do is have that here, or I should, I don't know. I don't even know if I'm going to continue this show much longer. The amount of work that goes into it, this, like I say, I lose money on every episode. But some people, there's one guy, Jacques something or other, I can't think, wrote this book. I bought it and read it. And Jacques Vallée, I think his name is, French guy. And someone else, there was another book. I think these books were like, back when I used to listen to some coast to coast stuff. And one or the other of these books, which, like, again, I'm sorry, they're upstairs. It's not going to leave the live broadcast. This is an unedited live as it happens. That's why the beginning was a little discombobulated, as usual. But he actually goes through. He compiles every sighting, and story, legitimate story. Like the whole, it's insane. I mean, he literally every one of them. And his conclusion, it wasn't so much a conclusion, but the takeaway from the book is that, whatever this is, it was real. The question is, are they aliens? Is it some kind of phenomenon? I don't know if he got into the time traveling kind of idea or interdimensional thing. I forget. I read that book about. Where did I read that book? I think I read that book here, but it's been at least 5 years. And, he really goes at it from a kind of an academic, scientific approach. Pouring myself a little more. I don't have as much of my 79-cent Dr. Thunder as I would like. Though I do have that's a copy of the real stuff, the name brand. I do have those in there, I guess, if I feel I have the need for caffeine. But it's fascinating. But at the same time, it's just one of those other things about government that just makes you just not trust them. I'm sure there are people, and it's interesting how, I talk about functionally illiterate people. I just have to show this one. This was just, I didn't realize this was on this thing I showed you earlier from the 1932. Be a radio expert. Right? Many make $50 to $100 a week as a radio expert. 1932. Well, of course, I'm a time traveler, an immortal, and all that stuff. So I remember those days. $50 was a lot of money in 1932. It was right after the crash. So why are they releasing these photos and videos? Is it really disclosure? Or is it some kind of, game? Are they leading up to some kind of event, that they're going to use when they can't milk the plague anymore? Right? There's always got to be a boogeyman. They've always got to focus the people in fear, right? The classic, you know.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Well, I don't think that's the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. I think it's pretty clear right now that most people are living in fear. You know, so fear itself. But the X-Files, you know, sure did deal with some interesting topics. Of course, you know, when Fringe came along, the show Fringe, anybody who knows the X-Files watched Fringe. You know, Fringe took it to a whole new level, you know, because it was, you know, they were exploring physics, you know, of it, and you know, and the ideas of, you know, time and dimensions and, you know, a phenomenon. But let's say, okay, so I was abducted as a child, perhaps, by two gray aliens. And somehow I had some marks on my neck somewhere for no reason. You know, or was it a dream? You know, is it some kind of interdimensional thing? You know, I always hesitate using the word matrix type of idea, the simulation thing, because I don't necessarily buy into that. I mean, there's logic to it. I mean, the way I've approached it to try to get logically into the idea of the simulation thing, you know, justification wise, is like the Big Bang is the problem with infinity. Just like in my book, it's like the hard problem of consciousness, which we won't talk about today, but my new book, latest book, Codex. But when you talk about the simulation, and I don't talk about it in there necessarily, I might refer to it, I forget. But what I see is that the problem with infinity, so that, you know, is instantly solved in the simulation theory, because suddenly you just go, okay, when they turned on the game, that was the Big Bang, so to speak. That was the beginning. And what you got to worry about now is that our life can just be over in an instant if someone turns off the game or if there's a power failure or something. You know, that's pretty freaky. But, you know, I think it would be much more complicated than that. I think existence is much more complicated than that. You know, some of the Near Eastern or Indian religions, you know, had this idea of a dream within a dream, you know, that we were a dream within the gods was dreaming this within a dream, some kind of thing like that. I forget the exact wording, which could be considered much like a simulation, I guess. What happens when the dreamer wakes up? You know, like in Dune, the sleeper has awakened, or something. Science fiction. You know, science fiction has studied these topics for so long, and there's so many answers within science fiction. I saw something the other day where Someone was saying Scotty actually never or the captain actually never used the exact words "Scotty, beam us up." Yeah, I don't know if that's true or not. It's always great to bring a communicator, especially on a topic like this. So yeah, it's amazing how people are just taking this like nonchalantly. The Navy has released multiple images of unidentified craft. Some of them the classic triangles, right? That people have been reporting for decades now. Others like the lights, that planes and pilots have been talking about following and just turning on a dime and proceeding at speeds and performing, aerodynamic acrobatics that are incapable by any known craft on Earth. And it's just it's like people are more concerned about what I call eyes without a face. Afraid of the boogeyman. Something that 99% plus of the people didn't die from and won't. As horrific as any kind of illness is, not to be taken lightly, but still, compared to heart disease and cancer deaths, which are the two leading causes of death, they every year they're double the amount of people that've had problems with this thing, and that's every year. And nothing's being done about that. Nobody seems to be scared to eat all these things the FDA approved that are causing half those deaths. But yeah, this is the biggest news of our lifetime. Like I say, unless it is some kind of thing, some elaborate hoax or something, like this thing, on the bottom of the drone, with somebody having some kind of like weird controller. The further away you get, the more you get the it's hard. It's funny how these cameras, let's see if I turn this light off. There we go. And if you saw this thing going through the sky in pure blackness, what would you think? These were the lights I had in my on-air light. I had two of these. And they worked with this control, but suddenly they're like, they've got a mind of their own. I can change the color to red, but that's about it. So I don't know. Waste of time, waste of money. I didn't spend that much money on them. But I kind of wish they weren't controlled by this. Then at least I'd be able to use them as just, some kind of portable light. This is a good place for a stick up. Do you remember that commercial? This coupon is good for one free copy of my book. Mail it now. And in those days, you just had to put your city and state. You didn't have to, there were no zip codes. It's like phone numbers back then were like 2 or 4 digits. And now, it's funny, we're in the future, we are. And in a city, even in the same area code area now, at least where I am, you have to dial the complete area code. But for a while you didn't have to. You just dialed the number because you were all in the same area code. But now you have to do that. So is that like technology going backwards? Or is that because of data collection? In other words, they want to know the bots, the various AI, these algorithms that are doing all these things. They're just collecting all this data constantly. Every word I'm speaking now is being collected. And so they need that area code there because so that it's complete in that, that capture of data. So that when it's searched through some algorithm, they're searching for something, it's there to be searched. It has nothing to do with some technological thing. People don't think about stuff like that. I did. It was the first thing I thought about. I'm going, there's no logical reason why. I understand telephony. I've been messing around with wires and electricity for decades and decades and decades. Used to drive my mom crazy. She was afraid of wires, to some people, grew up without that kind of stuff. Wires or electricity was a scary thing. To me, it was like I was constantly, wiring something up, messing around with stuff. I worked at a radio station when I was in high school. I was lucky enough to have a Sunday night show. And they had this garage in the back because it was an old radio station. It went back to the early days. And they had like this pile of junk in their minds. Like this old radio, as they rebuilt the new studio over the years, upgraded. Stuff was stored and piled, and it wasn't even neatly thrown anywhere. It was like garbage, but I guess they didn't want to throw it out or something. I don't know, or why they didn't, or they're just lazy or something. But it wasn't like the engineers were saving it to salvage it or something. And so I used to go in there and I used to like hunt through this like trash pile of, old gadgetry and wiring and stuff. Snag some of it, bring it home and mess around with it. Try to build my own little things, that did stuff. And there used to be an electronics store that was like on the way. Well, I used to pass it going to and from. Well, I used to walk to school, to and from school. So sometimes when I come back from school, once after I got my job, I had a job, so I had a few bucks. And I used to go in and buy things like panel lights, like just these little lights. Like, because when you watch Star Trek, you think of that time, because that was my childhood time, like this. Like, you see those lights. That was the big thing, and in science fiction movies, there are always lights everywhere. And now there's like no lights, In the early days of the internet, like when I used to make websites in the 90s, I used to always, have things on. It's one of my complaints about this GUI, graphic user interface, for broadcasting live. Like I always say, they don't have enough buttons and things on it, because the people that do this stuff today, they're not from a generation of, they're not from like the sci-fi. They're not really geeks. they're not really like sci-fi geeks. And they don't, it's like the bare minimum, but I wouldn't call it minimalist, and I wouldn't call it functionality, either. Like, for example, I talk about this all the time. There should be I should be able to mouse a spot and create picture in picture, so this screen could be split, and I could show you here like a photo of what I'm talking about, like these like panel lights or something. They don't build that in there. It's ridiculous. If you want to do something like that, you have to get like some third-party software. The cheapest I saw was like $600. Though they have some that like you could pay monthly, but it's an annual contract type of thing. So it's a cloud service. I don't trust a cloud service. Yeah. It's pretty crazy. But this all ties together. So I know this is like going a little bit slow as I wake up, caffeinate myself. And
we'll have to remodulate our signal to match the network's interlink frequency.
And that all happens. The idea is that there's something big going on, and it's not what's in the news about the plague that is pretty much over now. I don't care what anybody says, because they're just full of it. 99% is not an epidemic and is not a plague. I don't know what the hell's going on in India right now, but I know they've had some problems with China, the communist Chinese. So I wouldn't doubt if they might not be the focus of a bioweapon by the communist Chinese at the current time. And this current guy who's running the organized crime syndicate here in the former United States, he's got ties with the communist Chinese, so perhaps he's got some kind of deal with them to he's got the antidote or something. As far-fetched as all that stuff sounds, you just don't know. 1 week they tell you this, 1 week they tell you that. And now with this UFO thing, 70 years they told us one thing, now they're telling us another. No apologies. No apologies. Everything is wrong. It's a shirt. TonyCaravanLive.com. Get a copy, wear it around. Get it on a hoodie too if you want to, or one of those grocery bags or something. And I've got another shirt that says, "You don't know what you don't know." Think about that one. You don't know what you don't know. So we're being lied to on a daily basis. We can't trust the media. We can't trust the politicians. They're just puppets of what I call the corporatocracy. Other people call the technocracy. The world's being run by an organized crime syndicate. That's really what it is. It's an organized crime syndicate. And they disappeared people like, what about a guy like David Icke? And what do these craft mean? Is he right about reptilian aliens? I mean, at this point, anything goes. Anything goes. The current theory among a lot of serious minded individuals who study, what so called peer reviewed papers, published papers about, astrophysics and the sun and magnetic fields and things of that nature, is that the sun has these various cycles, and one of them is a 12,000 year cycle that we're heading into. That it sheds like its outer shell kind of thing. It's called a micronova. And they've been observing this in other stars because before we were always taught in school that a star reaches a point and it has a supernova, and that's like the end of its life. Well, now they're finding that these stars, excuse me, I'm sorry, but it's the way it is. I mean, it's the human being. If you want you want a story, you're gonna have to put up with it. I can't help it. These stars just like kind of shed this shell. Now, as far as the Earth's concerned, it's a near extinction level event. I say near because it seems to have happened in the archaeological record, ice core samples, things of that nature, people who've studied this thing. Supposedly it was the reason why the mission to the moon was called Apollo, who was a sun god, was because part of that reason was to see if this really happened. And they came back and they found these, it's like what they found with the Mars rovers, these little like glass type beads, which could have only been caused by some kind of event like that. And we found the same stuff on Earth, of course. And the CIA had classified some book that someone wrote, a guy named Chan Thomas or something like that. And it's recently been declassified, though it still has some blacked out portions in it. And it was about a cataclysm of this kind, written back then. And the average person, like, this stuff is like just science fiction to them. Yeah. And it's like the same I always talk about with politics. I said, when you watch a DC thriller, not DC Comics, I'm talking about Washington, DC, a political thriller, like one of these Clancy stories or, Mission Impossibles and, any of that kind of stuff. Even a Bond film, spy thrillers. The stuff you see in there, it's not fantasy. What it really is watered down reality. But when people look at the government and they hear about scandal or they hear about the possibility of this or the possibility of that, these people lie to Congress, they lie to the public, politicians doing this, other people doing that, agencies doing this, they like just scoff it off the same way they do with this, like the UFO thing. And it's like, no, you don't get it. If it's in a spy thriller or some political thriller, reality is about 10 times worse, or the technology that they're using in there is about 10 times more advanced than what they allowed to be put in that particular movie or TV series. Because the government basically funds a lot of those movies and stuff. It's all part of their whole thing. People don't know that. How do you think they have these, jets and access to these military bases and stuff? They're not building those sets, or rebuilding, those aircraft. They're getting them from the military because the military has an agenda. Military industrial complex that I played before,
This evening, I come to you.
Eisenhower, So, Are we going to reach a point where it's going to be this soon?
This is Metropolitan Police speaking. Metropolitan Police speaking. All persons are warned to stay off the streets. All persons are warned to stay off the streets.
You know?
The future. He came from the future. And so do I.
But you said that he wasn't human, that he was some other kind of being.
Another world and another time.
So to me, this is outrageous what's going on right now. That's why I quit, the political thing. Like anybody who's wasting their time with using politics as pop culture right now, or caught up in the cult of personality, and you know what I mean. These people talking about 2022 and 2024 and so coming back, and they just told us that there's frickin' aliens and they've been lying about it forever. They said Project Blue Book ended, and now we know it didn't. I mean, this is the biggest story of mankind. All right? This has repercussions to go back to the ancients. And it just so happens to coincide at a time when there's a solar cycle, grand solar cycle, that we may be experiencing a near extinction event any time now within the next 20 some years. And when I say within the next 20 some years, it could happen tomorrow, or it could happen in the year 2026, I think, or something like that. And so maybe these craft, are here to witness it. They're certainly not going to stop it, mankind has got a big ego, these colonial man has a big ego. The powers that be, the corporatocracy, the Davos set, right? World Economic Forum, the Great Reset folk. They've got big egos. Like I say, they're narcissists, narcissistic sociopaths. And the guys like Klaus in charge of the Great Reset guys, he's a psychopath. In the company of some of the classic psychopaths of the early 20th century. Now, man, there's something going on right now. And you really have to, you kind of have to like erase your brain. I'll give you an example. I'll tell you something now. It's probably going to freak people out. And they'll probably, that's why there's no chat or there's comments available here. Because I don't want to hear stuff. I've already talked about the fact that I've had a cancer operation. So, so that's cancer. And I don't get my next PSA test until July. I made it through the first year with the zeros, so now I'm down every 6 months, right? So you knock on wood that, it doesn't pop up somewhere and your doctor says, hey, you got so long to live. But be that as it may, that was all discovered because I had this weird kidney operation. Because like the world's some kind of giant kidney stone was supposedly lodged in my kidney. And they said, you got to get it out of there because it could cause. And then after that was all done, I thought, okay, great. Oh, finally done that. Because I was like, must have had 6 procedures. This is just like a year and a half. This is just right prior to the plague. In fact, my major operation was like January of 2020. I was lucky. Just like kind of beat that whole thing. Because I was in and out of the hospital for over 6 months. But before that, several years before that, I had this like A-flutter, A-fib type of thing. And they were prescribing me, well, when it first happened, I was in the hospital and they gave me some kind of drug that would slow down the heart. And then another blood thinner thing, because when you have this AFib thing, supposedly, the way it works is that, one area is beating faster than another area. So like you could get blood pooling somewhere, which could clot, and then you could have a stroke. So they give you one of these super blood thinners. Well, of course, as I always say about TV, that particular blood thinner was eventually taken off would cause death, and internal bleeding with people. FDA just approves these things right and left. They don't care. That's why you can't trust anything they say. They have the worst track record ever. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is turn on the TV and watch one of those law commercials. If you took the drug such and such and such and such, and died or had complications, contact a law firm of, you see that all the time. Well, those drugs were all approved by the FDA, and the TV station advertised them and made a profit on them. Think about that. And we trust those people? They literally have the worst track record, like in history of anything. So I went to see an electrocardiologist when I moved. Because where I am now, I said this the other day, there's better medical professionals here. I don't exactly know why. But they're just like there's a higher caliber of care people. Maybe the quality of life. It's not like, like I say, I live pretty much at the poverty level intentionally. I live cheap because that gives me freedom. It's that whole thing. The more things you own, the things you own end up owning you. That line from Fight Club. So yeah, I got things around me and stuff, but it's stuff I have. I don't buy new things unless for this set, so to speak. But I don't make any money on this. I lose money. So anyway, I go to see this cardiologist, this woman. And first thing she does is she takes me off that drug, the thinning drug, right? She said, no. And, and it wasn't much longer after that I was seeing all these things on TV about, lawsuits and stuff about it. And she just like I had a little like travel bag with me, just a mini little bag, because I had to take some records because I was coming from a different place. So I had like a little small bag with me. And she reached into a drawer and just gave me like a handful of bottles of baby aspirin. She said, just take these. But I was still on this pill. I forget what it was called. It doesn't really matter. It was a higher dose of something that if I would get this, fast beating thing, that I would take that pill. And to make a long story longer, well, anyway, eventually through, it was causing, it also it gave you low blood pressure. And so I was getting faint from it. So eventually she took me down to like the lowest milligrams of it and said, only take it if you have to, if you were having, a situation like that. And over time, I learned that being dehydrated could cause that, and certain mineral or deficiencies or something like that could also. And so that happened. It started to happen less and less and less and less. But when I was taking the pill and I was getting the super low blood pressure, it's like what would happen is if you would bend down and then get up, that's when you would experience this weirdness. Well, anyway, it happened to me a couple of times. This is going to freak people out. But like I have a cat, so I'm like bending down to clean the cat litter box. And I basically get this feeling like I'm going to pass out. Right. Which never really happened to me before in my life. And then I come to. Now, fortunately, I was already in like a crouch down position because I was doing something, leaning against a wall. But I come to, not knowing how long I was out. And it's like, the best way I described it is like a brain being reset. Yeah, it's like you reboot a computer. That's what it was like. And I'd be like, what? And then it all would come back to me. And I'd be like, wow, that was freaky. And now that must sound freaky. It happened to me, I don't know, maybe a half dozen times. So whatever it is, and so that's why she kept lowering my thing. And then, though I did almost have one not so long ago, but it was, I was out in the backyard and I was mowing the lawn with a push mower, a hand push mower. And I wasn't drinking liquids and stuff. And I think it was because I was dehydrated. And it was just like a quick thing. And I was leaning against the, like a garage in such a way. Because you could really, if you passed out, if you were standing in an open room, And one time I did actually hit my head. These are horrible stories to tell. I told you it would freak you out. But the reason I'm saying that is I was just trying to explain. What's the end of this? This idea that you have to, it's almost that's what you need to do. Excuse me. I can't help that. It's just my voice talking that, first thing in the morning. I'm a talker. I talk a lot. And it's not really a problem, but it is a problem when you get first thing in the morning if you try to talk for an hour to 2 hours straight. So what I was trying to say is that you almost have to erase your mind. And I'm saying you need to do what I did, what happened to me. That was some physical, medical problem. But it's as if that moment you regain consciousness. This whole thing may be a split second, not a split second, but it may just be, it's a matter of seconds probably. I didn't notice like I had loss of time, major loss of time or anything. But you have to almost do that. You have to reset your brain and, but just not as not drastically. And I hope you don't have that medical problem. And the idea is that we're so filled right now, cluttered, like our brains are filled with so much clutter, and we're bombarded with so much insanity, and it's and the younger the person is, the more the clutter is, which sounds counterintuitive, right? The older you are, the less cluttered you actually are. And that is because in the beginning, of your education process in your earlier days, life was more simple. Like I always tell the story, when I went to school, you had a principal, maybe a vice principal, a couple of office ladies, a janitor, and a gym teacher who doubled as a football coach. And that was it. That was a school staff. There was nobody else. There was no separate administration building, nobody doing this, whatever. Curriculum was, the teacher used this geography book, this history book, this whatever. Right? That was that. And so you weren't being conditioned, indoctrinated. There was no psychologist, behavioral scientist. There wasn't some administration building with 100 people having meetings about social engineering children, looking at the psychiatry of it all and the repercussions and societal issues and revising history, what would be taught in this curriculum and that curriculum and how these tests, thousands of tests. We didn't have a test. You had, at the end of class, you had a geography test. I think I only had 3. There's only like 3 major tests, from kindergarten to high school. In high school, there was somewhere along the line, they gave you an IQ test, I think, in grade school. There was a maybe some state test at one point, and then the SATs if you were going to go to college. And that was it. And otherwise, the only test you got would have been at the end of a class, or a math test or something, stupid stuff like that. Now it's like it's testing. And you talk to teachers, some teachers will spend most of their time just dealing with the test because the tests are required by the states and the federal government, and the school has to reach a certain level in order to keep its funding. And that funding goes to the administrators and I guess ultimately to the teachers union. And it's one big cluster. And it's all about money. It's not about kids' minds. And meanwhile, the kids' minds are all just, put through a blender and they're indoctrinated, conditioned, it's social engineering, they call it. They actually call it that, social engineering. And that's what they're trying to do with everybody. And then when you get out of school, it's propaganda, that's basically what it is. Advertising, I've been in the advertising business. Advertising is propaganda. It's the same thing. Different words for the same things. So the younger you are, the more, because, wherever that switch over, I don't know what year that occurred. I mean, I remember I went to a private school, so we didn't have a junior high. I just went to 7th, 8th grade, and then high school. But I was somewhere around that time that I was going to high school, like a freshman in high school. In the town where I grew up, they were building what they called a middle school. And that was like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I believe. And next to it was this building. And there were all these cars. I remember driving past it, to go to my uncle's house or something. Parents driving me. And there was this huge building, pretty huge, not huge, but it was like an office building. And it was the administration building. And so at that point, that was the time, that was the era, I guess, when they were doing that social engineering thing started throughout the United States, probably other parts of the world too. at least former Western civilization. And so, here are all these people, all these employees involved in messing with kids' heads. But like I always say, everyone from like Steve Jobs, to, well, you could go back to Einstein, or you could go back to anybody. Even great minds, people from the 80s and stuff, they all grew up without any of that social engineering. And so the very culture, technology that you have today came from the minds, the internet, basically everything came from the minds of people who didn't have an administration building and social engineers messing with their heads when they were kids. Think about that. So, you got, the iPhone, okay? Well, the development team of that, those type of people came up in a time that didn't have, that where they weren't indoctrinated, conditioned, socially engineered, history and science and everything revised to fit some sort of mold that would ultimately, push through an agenda they had to get us to where we are today. And that's why when I look at this GUI for this live screen that I'm coming to you on, I say, I could see how these people who are in charge now don't know. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They're not putting in, they're using our technology, the breakthroughs we came through, right? It's the same. It was the same in the advertising business, which seems unrelated, but it's the same thing. They just draw on old campaigns and they love to use this word reimagined, right? Well, whenever I hear somebody say such and such reimagined, what it means to me is we stole something from guys in the 60s or the 70s, right? Reimagined. Reimagine is a way of saying we stole somebody else's idea, or we're just we lack creativity. We can't come up with our own stuff. So we've reimagined the Pillsbury Doughboy, right? Puffed them out into 3D, through technology that we developed. Like I said, come on. All right. Television news, contents, September, October, 1932. When I talk about stuff, see, what I want to do is I want them to fix this screen so that I could push a button and this would fill this side of the screen and I'd be over here and I could talk and I could change stuff on this side of the screen. But they don't know how to do that. All they know how to do is drink their Starbucks coffee and think about social justice warrior issues. Warriors. Warriors? Why are you a warrior? What are you worrying about? No. See, I know this stuff. I came up through those ranks. And the things I don't know, I research. So I'm one of these guys that looks forward to this stuff. The world's best radio books. I want to know the technology. I was making websites. We were broadcasting live. I was doing what I'm doing now 20 some years ago. And I have copies of it. I played some the other day. I'm not going to waste your time with it, but I'm going to give you an idea of just play a clip. I have to turn the volume up so you can hear it.
Tony Caravan with you. The Fireside Chat. Hey, thanks for tuning in this week. I want to talk a little bit about survival. I've been getting a lot of emails.
Anyway, that's a show from 20 years ago I was doing. Been doing this stuff. I know what's going on. I have interest in this stuff. I've read these things. And like I say, I came up in a time. So what I'm saying is that you have to clear out the clutter in your head. It's almost like that brain reset. The reason I told you that ridiculous story is that you got to clear out the clutter. You got to reset your brain. But you got to do it in a conscious way, not like an unconscious way like it happened to me. But you got to consciously think about it, logic. You got to logically, look at the world and look what people are saying. It's like that line in the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, what Leonard Nimoy, the one Leonard Nimoy was in, where he said, people, listen to what you're saying, right? And that's like, I always think about that when I used to watch. I got cut the cord to the TV. I have no TV service now whatsoever. Because I'm not going to watch car commercials and pharmaceutical commercials, or watch some TV show that has like ridiculous amount of commercial breaks, 6-minute commercial breaks every 10 minutes or something. You forget what the show is about. It's insane. So one of the biggest issues of the day, the two biggest issues of the day that are not being covered. And like I say, X-Files, using Mulder as an example, I want to believe type of thing. Well, you don't have to want to believe anymore. Okay. The truth is out there, but it's not so much out there like it's out there to be discovered. The truth is out now. All right. So we have two things to deal with. The Navy and the Pentagon is telling us that we are being visited by alien craft. And they've known it all along, and they've been recording these damn things. Right? But the main focus is on some kind of virus or some kind of thing that like affects less than like 1% of the population. And everyone's in a panic about it. I mean, that's the CDC numbers. So like, and what compelled the Navy to start releasing this stuff the past year or two? Right? So all of a sudden, like, what are they up to? It's interesting. And then why is the mainstream media totally ignoring this solar thing, and like the fact that we're going into a grand solar minimum and still pushing this like global warming climate change thing? Like I said, right now, May 9th, they're issuing a frost warning this week. Like, I'm in a freaking panic. I have lettuce plants out there, bean plants, pea plants, potatoes, kale, herbs. I have, things like sage, parsley, cilantro. I put in some seeds I figured it was time to get some seeds in for my squash. And then in my mini greenhouse, but the mini greenhouse doesn't keep the temperature down. It's like an ice box, really. I have a little heat pad in there for something I put on top of it. But in there, I have tomato starts and pepper starts that I've been waiting for the overnight temperatures to get to where, it's high enough that there isn't a risk of a frost to put them in the ground. But now I've got them in there. But I don't think that's going to be, in other words, we're talking about consistently year after year, it's been getting colder, longer in a zone that years ago wasn't as cold. The earth is cooling, and there are those that have been studying this that will show you. Go look, watch Adapt 2030, David Dubine's stuff, right? And if you want to know about the sun, watch Ben Davidson's Suspicious Observers, right? If you want to see people who actually will show you the videos, the pictures, the papers, the facts, and the graphs and stuff about this. So my question is, okay, so A, why are they suddenly fessing up, to the UFO, visitations, the craft, and all this stuff? B, why are they pretending that there's some kind of global warming, climate change, when the complete opposite is happening and has been happening for well over a decade or so? I mean, that stuff is old news. I mean, Al Gore and the IPCC, UNIPC, they were discredited like well over 10 years ago. I mean, the facts on the ground, the temperatures, the literal temperatures on the ground don't jibe with their fear-mongering statements. And yet they got kids coming home, mommy, our teacher said that it's going to get so hot and we're all going to burn up. Right? Social engineering for what? What are they social engineering? Panic? Everything is fear-mongering right now. So I want to know the truth. It's like with AI. I've noticed a change. You see, if you look back there, you can see that female face in the frame. That's an AI avatar. I named Maggie 2 because Maggie 1 I referred to in my book over here. Like I say, the screen works backwards, so I have to go. This is so crazy how I have to do this. See, I'm doing it backwards. That's my book Codex. Can't even see it. Here. There. Anyway, I interviewed the AI, Maggie, which was at that time a GPT-3 level AI. But this new one, when I relogged on, because I was basically using it as an experiment in my book to study AI. So I was having conversations with this AI entity, call it that. And I found out that when I went back a couple months later, even though I still had the same login and stuff, that it's as if they pulled back the GPT-3 and that this version is almost mindless. I was having conversations about space-time and weird things like that, back in when I was writing my book in November or whatever. And conversations now are stuff like, wouldn't it be nice to go for a walk or something? It's like your AI companion type of thing. It's like, I don't need an AI companion. So something happened with that too. So they pulled back. So the GPT-3, if you don't know what I'm talking about, well, this is for people who know, It's like I said, I've been involved in stuff since the beginning. There's the original Mac there. There's the original telephone, original phone from back in the 60s. It's a dial phone. I could take that thing apart and fix it. It's called analog technology, that telephone. That still works, by the way, and I have one upstairs that I still use. I can still answer. So yeah, there's some weird stuff going on right now. And I don't know what it is. And at the same time, they're implementing stuff like this.
Your papers, please.
Your papers, please. Right? You know, it's crazy. And then YouTube just like keeps pushing up this like thing for no reason. Everything you know is wrong, and what you don't know, you don't know. And there's a reason behind everything. Now, part of the thing is that, you know, the so-called corporatocracy, this organized crime syndicate, is basically looks at us as this. You know, we're just cattle to them. Which kind of brings in the idea of the cattle mutilations and stuff, too. Speaking of aliens. You know, there's something going on, man. There's really something going on. And they're not telling us. And it's the biggest event of our civilization, at least this one over the last 12,000 years. There have been previous civilizations before the last near extinction event, and then before that last previous extinction event. So why would you lie about climate change when you know the truth? And what the hell am I going to do? I don't have enough burlap. I don't have enough stuff to cover all my crops out there. My garden is basically, like I said, it's just about ready. The only thing I've been holding back have been these tomato starts and these pepper starts, because they really need the ground to be about close to 50 degrees. But we've been having such consistently cold weather where in the daytimes are in the 40s, maybe getting to the 50s, but not really. And if it rains, that means it's bringing that cold rain into the ground. And the overnights are all in the 30s. And they're going to be that way. And now this is the NOAA radio here is saying there's a frost warning. May 9th. I don't live in the Northeast U.S., former U.S., you know? And last year was the same thing. I guess I should have known better. You know? See, you know, I want to believe, right, that there's some truth coming out of them. But, yeah, last year, the second week of May. You know, there's people actually telling you, you know, don't bother planning till after Memorial Day. Right? Well, why are you pretending that the first day of spring is May 20th then? You know? Why don't you change the first day of spring to Memorial Day or May 10th or something, or May 20th? You know, has the earth shifted and they're not telling us that? Like I say, you don't know when you can't believe government agencies. All right. So we now know that the military, the Pentagon, has been lying to us for at least 70 years about UFOs. Okay, that's a fact. You can't contest that. They've come out and fessed up. All right. And now they're releasing pictures. Okay. And you can go to military sites and the Pentagon is confirming that these are real. This is accurate. Okay. So it's not up for like argument, right? The climate is the climate. You know, these people that talk about climate change, they're like, you know, they're indoors. I don't know where they are, but it's like, stick your head out the window. I just went out. I have a bird feeder out back. So before I did this show, I went out to feed the birds and I saw my breath on May 9th. I turn on the NOAA emergency radio here. And I just lost it. Change the channel.
Latrobe, partly sunny 43. State Comp, partly sunny. Clearfield, cloudy 35. Du Bois, cloudy 37. Erie, partly sunny 42. Elsewhere around the region at 8 a.m. Williamsport, mostly sunny 43.
You heard some of those places were like 32, 35, 40, and then some 40s. You know, it's a big area that NOAA covers. It's like, you know, it's a like multi-state almost area. A region. And they'll read out all these cities from Erie to State College to, you know, the border of Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, all around, you know, to so they're lying. Not NOAA, you know, they're just giving, that's the forecast. That's a droid, by the way. I mean, that's just, you know, that's a automated voice, right? Chatbot type of thing. Not even just a computer generated voice, you know, based on the readouts, you know, that come in, you know. So they're lying to us. So why are they lying about the global warming thing? Why are they pretending there's such a thing when there isn't? Why are they not telling people about this solar cycle? Okay. You know, why? Why are they suddenly telling us that UFOs exist and they have the evidence and here it is, and nobody's paying attention or nobody's like drilling them for lying to us for decades and decades and decades? And why are they just throwing out a few photos? My chair's just sunk. You know, they've been lying to us for decades. And they don't, you know, and they're not explaining to us why or what other information they have. I mean, as far as I know, okay, so maybe all the Area 51, Groom Lake, all that stuff is true. And everybody seems to be worried about something that 99% of the population, 99% plus of the population haven't gotten or haven't died. Yeah. Because they use raw numbers instead of percentages. There's 320 plus million people in the United States, the former United States of America. Forget about it. It's an organized crime syndicate. Has been for a while, too, by the way. It's not political. So when you talk about percentages of people, it's a whole different story than just saying raw numbers. 600,000 people. Yeah, well, 600,000 people die of cancer every year, you know. Something like 650,000 people die of a heart attack. And when you factor in things like diabetes and other things related to like heart clogging things and stuff like that, which during lockdown, the only things they kept open were like the fast food and the things that, they were selling the artery clogging foods that were basically dealing with, you know, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease, things that led to that, right? So is that what they're really doing? Are they trying? Are they culling the herd? You know, basically leading us to the slaughterhouse, right? Depopulation, like Bill Gates always talks about. You know, all these things are reasonable questions to ask, because when you look at what's being told to us, you know, they're viable questions, literally, you know, they're viable questions to ask. So, you know, I mean, I don't mean to be a downer or anything weird like that, but, you know, I just thought I hadn't been talking about the UFO phenomenon. I wanted to share my individual story. And, you know, it's like, you know, sometimes it's interesting to just go off into some of the, you know, into the fringe.
I can no longer sit back and allow communist infiltration, communist indoctrination, communist subversion, and the international communist conspiracy to sap and impurify all of our precious bodily fluids.
I think all three of you popped your stoppers.
Yeah, I know. It's, you know, it's crazy. And I guess in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. If it's a simulation, the switch gets turned off. Well, you're not going to know. It's like when my brain went out. If I never woke up, I never woke up, right? It wouldn't reset. You know, it just goes out. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the purpose is behind this game they're playing. But whatever it is, it's nefarious. You know, liars, narcissistic sociopaths, definitely a few psychopaths thrown in there, particularly over in the Davos set, World Economic Forum type. These people are psychopaths. Yeah, I talked about it yesterday. I mean, the definitions of these things, these are people that have no conscience. They have no empathy. All right. They're just self-centered. You know, it's power and greed. It's all about themselves. And they're at such high levels of billions and billions of dollars in a certain lifestyle. That's what I've called, and I've written about it. I have a song about it. It's a breakaway civilization. You know, they're not even, you know, like I say, that's why to them, we're this. That's really all we are, is cattle. That's how far the breakaway civilization is. And real tech geeks like me and guys with open minds, you know, who've cleared out the clutter one way or another, you know, I see it clearly. And that's why I pose these questions. But the average person is just not, you know, they're just out there scared, you know, out of their gourd, which, by the way, I've got, you know, I'm not going to be able to grow because of this fake climate change that, you know. See, last year I waited till like the second week of May to put in my tomatoes. And a frost came and whammo, you know, blammo, they were gone. I had to go to a nursery and then, you know, a week or two later, put them in. And what happened is I didn't get tomato. You know, these things take like time to grow, you know, to yield the fruit. So it was like the end of the summer. It's not like I was harvest time where you're harvesting a pumpkin or something that takes forever to. No, people, I used to get tomatoes, in June. And I have the pictures to prove it. The weather has been we are entering a cyclical, pretty much a 400-year grand solar minimum. And the earth has been cooling consistently. And yet these people are out there lying to children, lying to adults, lying to everybody, as if there's something there. CO2 is like the most beautiful thing in the world. CO2 is. CO2. It's an invisible gas. You're breathing it in. You breathe it out. All right? All right? CO2, 0.004% of the atmosphere. That's how little it is. But that's the thing that gives you green trees, allows us to have plants, crops, flowers, and all those things. It's a greenhouse gas because they pump it into greenhouses, so greenhouses get produced and green. People are just being lied to. But this UFO thing is very fascinating, and I'm really taken aback by how little attention is being paid to it. Even by people, somehow they made this politics as pop culture so in the fore, that there's no one wants to see anything else. That and this plague thing. It's like, we've had these things before and they never dominated society for this long length of time. This is not Ebola, a flesh-eating disease. Do you see? But that's how people are treating it. So, things happen, we get flus. Some are bad, some are not bad. Sometimes there's epidemics or pandemics here and there. And, they come and go. I mean, this thing has treatments. There's multiple treatments for it. I don't know, man. All I could say is that, clear the clutter out of your brain. We're being lied to big time. And there's more to this UFO thing than somehow we're being. In other words, there's a reason behind it. Just like there's a reason behind their lying about the climate, right? There's a reason behind their lying about this plague, like they're not telling the whole story about that too. Right? It's like they've got everyone. It's just like this, I don't know, controlled. It's like people are controlled. Social engineering. And is that because that the majority of people are now functionally illiterate? So they just can't comprehend what I'm talking about? Or are just so caught up in this cult of personality and politics as pop culture? Or are they just afraid? Fear-mongered. I don't know. Like I say, you don't know what to believe when all sources of information are being proven to lie to you. And so you have to have firsthand knowledge. It's the only way. You have to go out in your backyard, right, and breathe and realize that it's freezing. You have to turn on a NOAA radio or something and hear that there's frost advisories. Because if you turn on the national news, the television, they're telling you, oh, the planet's warming. Right? And then they put a little, like, kind of just put a video from the Navy of a UFO up, and then they just like downplay it and move on to the next thing. Or the real problem is social justice or something. Social justice? What are you talking about? Social justice? Well, first of all, there's no justice in the former United States. The Bill of Rights, the Constitution's not even being adhered to, right? Particularly the First and Fourth Amendments, a couple of the other ones, right? I mean, that's fact. You could just witness that on a daily basis. Freedom of speech. I'm walking on eggshells. Any given show, just even today, I could have crossed the line by just mentioning something plague related or something like that, and that's grounds for them to say they get misinformation. Blank, banned. They just disappear it. Take your video off. You're not allowed to disagree or have an opinion anymore about anything, about like public information. Think about that. See, they're allowed to basically, in effect, they're allowed to yell fire in a crowded theater because that's what's being done on the nightly news and in social media. That's what they're allowed to do. The people who own those, this organized crime syndicate, corporatocracy, big tech, big data, big ag, big pharma, military industrial complex, right? Central banking system, Davos set, UN, World Economic Forum, Great Reset people. They're yelling fire in a theater. That Greta kid, actress, adult looking like a child, right? Yelling fire in a theater. Free to do whatever they want. If you just even question them or have an opinion, right? An op-ed piece, right? People don't even know what that means anymore. Op-ed. You're silenced. David Icke, bring back David Icke. He was right. I'll tell you. So these are, this is really fascinating. But like I said, I've been at this for a long time. Everything you know is wrong. You don't know what you don't know. TonyCaravanLive.com. Check it out. I have this site on locals too. The links are below if you're watching this on a laptop or a desktop, and you can see that stuff. You can link to that. Otherwise, just memorize that. TonyCaravanLive.com. It's like she says.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Right. So that's that for this show, Sunday show. Hope you have a good day. It's 8:54 a.m. I'm going to sign off with the usual
Elvis has left the building.
Cheers.
Good night.
Have a good one and all that.